Welcome, everyone. I'm Lee Nadler, founder of Sherpa Marketing and chairman of the board for the Advertising Club of New York. The Ad Club is committed to keeping the marketing community connected, even while we are distant. We have transformed the Ad Club into a virtual clubhouse, providing members with online resources to help navigate. One of these resources is the Ad Club's Conversation With series, an ongoing webinar in which I have a discussion with thought leaders who are also Ad Club members. We hope these conversations remind you that we're all in this together and that the Ad Club of New York, your club, is here for you. We will have a question and answer session at the end, so feel free to submit questions into the chat area, and I'll be on the lookout for those. Hopefully, several of you have tuned in. We have over 300 people here today. The previous Conversations With sessions really started off and set the bar with Cheryl Gearin of MasterCard. Sophie Kelly of Diageo then made a drink from a bar in her kitchen. And now for our third episode, we have John Nitti, Chief Media Officer for Verizon, who will share 5 bars of clarity. John is responsible for integration across media, digital, marketing, and experiential, including sponsorships of the NFL, NBA, music, and esports. He's been on the agency side, and I'm thrilled that he is also a board member of the Advertising Club of New York. We thought we would start out by showing some of the amazing programs that John is leading with Verizon as the companies had to pivot from some of their normal sponsorships into a new way of doing business. Let us share those with you right now, 2 quick videos, and then John will come on and we'll have a great conversation.
Yo, support whatever local business you can, truly. I think it's such a sweet initiative. You can do so much to support. You can buy gift cards, you can buy a few meals to go, you can buy online.
Got a text from my mom. She just donated to a local coffee shop.
Oh my God, that's so freaking precious. Thank you, Mama Sis. Thank you guys for watching.
I feel so blessed to be able to play this Pay It Forward live specifically to support small businesses. And what I want to do today is a little bit special, a little bit different. Hi. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a lot of things.
Yeah.
We are pushing through and doing what we can to stay as innovative and as creative as possible.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your gift.
Thank you for sharing yours.
Thank you.
So John, welcome to Conversations With, and so glad to be able to spend time with you. And please tell us what you're up to, and maybe start with these programs of these amazing videos we just saw.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lee. Good to see you. Good to see everybody for participating. Thank you for participating and supporting the Ad Club. To Lee's point, very different setting, these virtual settings, which everybody's become accustomed to as part of the new normal, or at least the for now normal. We've, to your point earlier, Lee, we've had to pivot, right? We'd had to figure out how we make our customers and society both aware of what's going on, how it can be helpful and keep everybody connected, and then what we can do to enable communities to also give back and stay connected themselves. And that's where Pay It Forward Live was born out of. Within a week, we were able to stand up a distribution platform and pull together artists and virtual production. I've learned much about virtual production, especially when you're not allowed to go into an artist's house or venue to check connectivity or even see what equipment they have. Dave Matthews was our first artist that we utilized on that program, and from his attic and his in his old laptop, actually, he broadcast from. And so the premise behind that is, given everything that everybody's going through, given the struggles of small businesses that don't have the choice to work virtually, right? How can we give back? And everybody has a local barber or a local deli, a pizza shop, whatever it may be. If you just gave 3 gift cards out, to yourself, how do you keep them and help keep them afloat in this time when they can't conduct business as they are? I mean, small businesses are what make this nation thrive, and also obviously customers of ours at one point in time as well. And so it's super important for us from a society standpoint, keeping people connected and giving them also 2 days a week. You saw every Tuesday night we do gaming, which was a new and different thing for us, also very different production with our partners at Twitter and Twitch and other things there. And then Thursday night is music. And so you bring people together 2 nights a week for a common cause, and the engagement has been great. I've been happy to see how we've come together as an industry. We distribute across Facebook, YouTube, Yahoo, Twitter, our FiOS channels, Twitch, iHeart, and sort of the list continues to grow and on and on. And so we've come together as a advertising and media community and distribution, but just to see the tweets and the engagement from the actual community themselves and how they're supporting their small businesses has been something great. And doesn't, for me, it doesn't have there's no cell of Verizon in there outside of bringing people together. So.
There's so much in there that I want to unpack, but just to focus on a couple of things. One is, I remember watching on my couch the Dave Matthews performance, and I'm a Dave Matthews fan. I've been to many, many, many live performances, and honestly, I felt like I got to know him a little bit more through that, which was interesting because I wasn't in person in this one. But it was so human and raw that it almost gave you a whole different outlook and perspective on this person. How much of that do you kind of think about going into now these new ways of working with partners and sponsors and quote unquote influencers?
Yeah, like I think everything sort of changed, right? Like for us, Dave took a risk, we took a risk. We didn't know if it was going to work, right? You don't know, we had limited testing of his technology and his connectivity in his house. And so, I think a lot of this gets into risk taking, right? And doing things differently and learning how to evolve and change and adapt. And, I speak often to my team about sort of the silver linings of COVID, right? And what has come out of this is that you're able to get a lot of things that are orthodoxies or that have been stuck within process, unstuck and get through and advance things a lot more quickly just out of pure need. And so that was one of the good byproducts that I've seen from this crisis is a lot of things like that would have normally taken a huge production with many, many people involved, to your point, to get that authentic. It's him in his attic by himself with his laptop, and to have remote production crews basically just making sure that we're able to distribute it across those different distribution points. It's one of those things that rarely in your career you get to do, never been done before, right? And a lot of these things that we're doing are truly never been done before. And even more recently with the NFL draft, same thing of how we help support the NFL and connect 167 different locations between teams, players, and management offices to try and get their picks in. So it's been crazy in many ways, shape, and form, but also for me, exciting to be able to, be at a company that's at the center of connectivity and then to continue to try and connect people and do things in new and different ways.
Yeah, well, bravo. And I think you're definitely sharing something that most organizations are trying to figure out, of course, in very different ways and different applications, but the ways of doing things hopefully have sped up in a way where, listen, I worked for several big companies and know the challenges it can take from getting an idea and wanting to do it to moving it through the organization to then eventually putting it out into the world. That compression time hopefully has reduced, but also to your point, the risk taking is probably looked at differently, right? You're looking at doing things that are different, but I think also everybody knows that this is new, and maybe that gives you a little bit more room to try some things and hear a dog bark in the background, whatever it is, right? Whereas we used to be so uptight about getting things perfect.
Yeah, no, and like I said, even myself, as a department lead in the company, work from home policies were very very highly contentious topic in the past, and now you've proven that you can do all these things from home. You can do all these things virtually, and so that'll have lasting impacts. We talk both from a consumer behavior standpoint, but also even just how we operate as a business standpoint, or what are the habits and things that will live on post-COVID and help change and shape how we transact and work together. So
well, let's talk about a couple of those. Maybe just while we're on the topic of some of the programs and partnerships that you oversee, what kind of things do you think will continue on into the future from a partnership, sponsorship standpoint? And then maybe we can get into some examples from your team of how you're working. You gave the example of working from home, but there's probably other kind of new, nimble processes that you've put in place that maybe you'll continue.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, again, we're fortunate enough to where we work with the NFL, we work with the NBA, work with 17 different NFL teams, 10 different NBA teams, in discussions with NHL and have some NHL teams, NASCAR, Team Penske from an IndyCar standpoint, MLS soccer teams, and so and Live Nation and music partnerships as well, and so get to talk to a good cross section of businesses and partners that were used to thousands and hundreds of thousands of people jamming in shoulder to shoulder into a venue or establishment. And obviously that's not the reality for now. It's probably not going to be the normal reality for the future. And so, the combination of doing things, virtually and touchless and, and especially because people may never be comfortable going back into those situations, or if they do, it's going to be in a different environment, is a lot of our conversations, right? How do we enable that, right? How do you keep that connectivity with fandom, right, across sports and entertainment? And you look to, we mentioned esports and gaming. That's something that was born out of this virtual environment, right? And so what can also be learned there that can be applied now to, other areas of the business. And so it's, for me, it's an exciting time. To your point, the compression in both a good way, but I think this will bridge us into staff in a way that you have to manage for burnout because you're doing things so quickly, right? You're not going to have, and because we've seen you have people working more hours. It's not that you're working from home, so that's going to free me up to do more things. Right? We've seen quite the opposite, and maybe it's different it is different for different functions. But my team has taken on more work to operate within the crises. Has had to re-look at how we partner with companies, whether it be agencies or partners across the board, and then also plan for the future. That's all compression, and so you need to be careful that you don't overload people or burn people out, because now a decision where you have 2 weeks to work on something now becomes 24 or 48 hours, right? That's you can easily get yourself into a situation where not good headspace. And so it's a balance of those things. There's the good that comes with taking out a lot of process and due process that perhaps you didn't need, and continuing to overdrive your digital touch points and the way that you do things. But how do you balance out human capital and make sure that you have enough time to think and make the sound decisions because you are moving so quickly?
That's a great point. Yeah. And what about in terms of even how you look at success of some of these programs? I won't put it into a box of KPIs, but I imagine you got pretty sophisticated in terms of how you did look at KPIs for all the different programs and partnerships that you've run over the years. For some of these new things, I can only imagine part of it was just like it worked. But you mentioned engagement earlier. Are you putting things in place that you let the partners know you're looking for, or is it really kind of a watch and see in this early stage?
Well, again, you can you look at innovation and evolution two ways. You either, and you probably feel slightly sick in either way you look at it. You can look at it in a daunting way and feel sick about it, or you can look at it as it's an opportunity to innovate and again, like I said, do never been done before things. I think we're at that point where there's not one business that can say that they're not looking at having to do things differently because of this crisis, right? And so that opens up opportunity. But yeah, you need to establish new KPIs, right? You need to have greater optics into things. If you look at something like Pay It Forward Live, we didn't, that was truly for the impact to society and impact to our customers as the main KPI. Now looking back at what drives more engagement, right? How do we get more and more people as we get into millions and millions on every Tuesday and Thursday of people engaging across platforms? How do you look to optimize that? But again, we're not doing that with a normal what's a Verizon gross ad that comes out of that program, right? So you need to look at deeper or other metrics of how we're moving, with the give back to society. If I'm asking you to buy a gift card for your local pizza place, I'm not highly untrackable, right? And so, and you don't want to force people through a system and create friction. And so, you have to look at other things that are inferences and you can use as proxies to ensure that what you're doing is actually making a difference.
It's a great point. And, there's always kind of that feeling when you're doing programs that people try and, constantly throw too many objectives in, right? And you're trying to do too many things at once. When you and I talked earlier, you really talked about kind of keeping people connected, as certainly one bucket, being as helpful as possible. And maybe you can talk about, so that people understand your business a little bit deeper, like you have different sets of constituents.
Yeah.
Right? As a consumer, of course. So how are you continuing to have a helpful business relationship with them? And then also there are other metrics that are out there to make sure that you're top of mind and seeing your brand in the right light and making sure that, I imagine it's a hard balance to walk on certain messaging of like, are we selling too much? Should we have our logo? Should we, talk about those three areas or others if you want, how you kind of bucket it.
And I think it's super interesting also geography wise, right? Because if you look at a New York or an LA heavily impacted, right? The consumer sentiment and how people are feeling and what they're doing and how they're acting is very different in different parts of the country too. And so you need to take that into account. But if from a Verizon standpoint, to answer your first question, we have three major business units, right? The Verizon Consumer Group, which is wireless or mobility, as well as home and residential solutions, so that the Fios or 5G home, et cetera. Then you have the Verizon Business Group, which is our business solutions group, whether enterprise, global, international businesses, small, medium-sized businesses, and how are we keeping them ready, right? How are you keeping them connected, right? Because you think about two very different issues and topics for consumer versus a business and how you stay afloat and what resources we're giving each and every one of you. And then there's the Verizon Media Group, which are things like Yahoo and HuffPo and Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports, our mail products, all of those things, right? We need to be helpful, right? So how are we letting you get to what you need to get to, right? If our stores are closed, how do you interact with us, right? How do we be helpful and give you that information? And how do we be truthful and let you know what's going on, right? Help you with different ways that you can stay safe and give you access to that information. And so, in both how you do it in the crisis state and then how you're going to interact with us as a brand go forward, right? You may not want to have a Fios tech come into your house, but you still want connectivity. And so if we're going to be helpful, we're going to send you a kit where you can do self-install and change the business models, right, in order to do so. And so, and even as we're looking at as we open retail, a contactless retail, experience is very much in what a consumer is going to want, at least for this time being. And so these are all things that we need to take into account. But to your point, underneath how we're either being helpful or truthful in providing people easiest access to the information they want and helping them on their journey by giving them the technology and solutions that they need for themselves or for their business. But it's been very, very, interesting in how we interact, across the board, right? How we interact as a team. To your earlier, comments, I mentioned silver linings and unsticking things. When you have large organizations, gaining alignment, consensus, and having clear communication cascade is one of your challenges. Even though we're all separate and we're all apart, I've never communicated more with my direct reports, right? once or twice daily, we're all on a WebEx or a Google Hangout or a Zoom, whatever it may be. And so communication flow and the speed of cascading and information and everybody hearing the same thing at the same time is at an all-time high. Right? And so that should be something that we continue to embrace and take out of this experience.
Right. And just continuing that for you personally, I mean, that's obviously a lot of transition and a lot of responsibility. Like, how are you keeping yourself kind of just mentally focused? And, we talked about this earlier also, just like being at home and working, you would think, okay, I've knocked out the commute, so I'm saving a lot of time and able to spend a lot more time with family and all that. It's sometimes hard to compartmentalize, but at the same time, how are you able to stay focused and kind of step back and make sure that you and your team are obviously going in the right direction?
It's hard, right? It's not easy. No, nobody's been in this situation before. So for those that don't know me, I live in Staten Island, New York. Always have, born and raised. It takes me on average an hour and 15 minutes to get to downtown Manhattan, where our 140 West Street's office are, or an hour and 15 minutes up to 87 to get to Baskin Ridge, our global headquarters, right? And to your point, I'd have that commute going in and coming back. My 30-second walk down the stairs to my basement where my office is, I'm down here by 7:15, 7:30 in the morning, and I probably head up a little bit ahead of that in the evening, right? And so when you think about it, 12 and 10-year-old boys that are upstairs, I hear them, but I probably see them less than I did when I had an hour and 15-minute commute. Same thing with my wife, and so it's just you got to create those boundaries and balance. And everybody's situation is different, right? I have employees that are by themselves. That's a very different challenge that you're dealing with. You don't have interaction outside of the virtual interactions, and that's a different mindset. I have employees that have very young kids that need to worry about they're doing the curriculum and helping with the e-learning, and so they can't be on between whatever hours during the day, and they need to be back on at night, right? And so you learn that you need to both set your own boundaries, but also then be flexible with your team as long as you have your common goals in place and you're all chugging towards common milestones and can complete that together. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me of how to get through it.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that human approach and understanding everybody's got different situations, and empathy definitely coming to the forefront now for everybody. Yep. What about, and I know everybody's in a different situation in their career, whether it's stage of their career or, there are obviously a lot of dramatic changes happening from different companies. And so we won't be able to get into all the details, but, the advertising club is definitely about a community that, whether you change jobs 5 times over your career or, move into a situation where you're trying to figure out your next move, the club is here for you. And the club is a connection point. And that's why we do a lot of different programs, and hopefully people take a look inside of the virtual clubhouse. There's all kinds of different programs we're running. From you personally though, because that's really what we want to hear from, like, is there some career advice that you've either been given along the way, could be years ago, could be recently, or career advice that you're giving now that maybe you think the folks listening, again, knowing everyone's in a different situation, the folks listening can maybe just hear from something that's been helpful to you from a career advice standpoint?
Yeah, no, I think, look, career advice wise, for those that are in the advertising industry, and especially in the advertising industry in New York, is both the biggest thing in the world and the most powerful and influential group of people that you would ever meet, right? We, in essence, between our connective network, control or influence so many different things, and it's amazing. And as a native New Yorker, it's one of the things that make me most proud to be involved with. But it's also super small, right? I learned, and I'll age myself a little bit here. I learned when I started at Young and Rubicam on Madison Avenue in the beginning of my career, and magazines were still very popular then, and sales reps would come in and they'd have a flip chart because nobody had laptops or projectors just yet. And so sitting in a cube as a media planner with my senior planner, one of the sales reps made me hold his presentation so he could present to my senior planner, right? And so our industry is super small, right? And you never know who you're interacting with, right? And so being empathetic, being respectful, and maintaining those connections is super important, right? You can rest assured that that rep met me at another point in my career and I was in a very different seat, right? But that lasted with me, right? And so our industry is very tightly connected. It's small for as big as it is. And so just remember that when you're interacting with people. Now, if you bring that to today in this crisis, right? It is how do you remain connected with people, not just when you need something, right? Another fact of when I've been on the agency side, I've been on the sales side, I've been client side. Now this is for the second time. You quickly also learn, when you bounce around to different sides, and specifically for me when I went over to the sales side, who those deep connections are, because those are the people that stick with you even when you're not, an ad page or you're not an ad budget to them overall. And so keeping in this time of crisis, doing the check-ins, keeping connected, but also being empathetic of if they don't get back to you, they may be jammed or buried or dealing with, they're out of work themselves and they're embarrassed, they don't want to talk, right? And so, empathy and connection, I think, are the two biggest things. And connecting with folks now, will help you down the road from a career standpoint. Maintaining those connections now and being there for people now will pay dividends in the future. And I'm a firm believer of that. I've seen it myself. It's just something to think about because much like everybody's in a different living situation, everybody's in a different economic situation, everybody's in a different career path situation now. And, many, many good, smart folks that are just, companies have no other choice but to put people on furlough or, make up for lost revenues one way or another. So it's going to be something that we're dealing with for quite some time.
I think that's a great point. In some ways, it kind of parallels the approach that you're taking with business. You're trying to be helpful first, right?
Exactly.
And try and figure out actual value that you can deliver. In your case, you actually have technology that can be helpful. And then you're still using it through your partnerships and programs, but in a new way. I bet you lots of people have ways that they can be helpful to others, even in a time when they may want to reach out for help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those connections definitely run deep in this industry. So a couple of other just quick questions, and I do see one or two Q&A questions. So folks online, if you want to submit questions, we're going to kind of jump into that in a second. But I guess, one thing I would want to understand a little bit from the program and perspective, from a media buying perspective, right? We talked a lot about partnerships and I imagine, there's just a bit of this that is still unknown, right? I remember when I was at BMW Group in Mini, we worked on a campaign for the Olympics. The Olympics has been moved back. I've orchestrated Super Bowl campaigns. It would not be too early to start now for 2021 Super Bowl if you really want to orchestrate a program from scratch. Again, with the unknown of just timing and everything, I won't ask you to try and forecast when things are going to happen, but how do you kind of look at, planning and putting things in that are, maybe it's known, unknown speculation, but there are certain things that you just need enough ramp and runway to get done properly. So how are you bucketing some of these bigger media programs and also other initiatives that you're taking on or have taken on in the past?
Yeah. I think there is, as in life, there's what's in your control and there's what's not in your control, right? So what's in our control to an extent is, how we look at the marketplace overall, where we're going to optimize investments, what longer term bets we want to take now, hoping that they pay dividends in the future, how flexible we want to be because there is a lot of unknowns. Those are all things that are in our control. I can, based upon informed, conversations, you can guess that the NFL season may start spectatorless, right? You know what I'm saying? You can guess that if the NBA season does come back to finish the 20% of the games that they have, at earliest, it'll be late summer, right? And again, we'll also be spectatorless, right? There are things just based upon how the different state and local governments start to reopen will affect, what can happen there. There are other things from a consumer behavior standpoint, video consumption, all-time high, right?
Yep.
Large amount of that non-ad supported. So what does that mean for our supply and demand curves, right? And how we look at the marketplace. There's CPM deflations, which is widely published, even in digital and in programmatic, right? And so you take all those input points and you try to optimize what your marketing mix is. And to your point, our budgets are not going to be the same. And so I'm forecasting what it is because you need to take into account business impact, right? If store closures, exist, if our revenues are down, if we're diverting funds to actually help people and help society by not charging them for late fees for their bills, or giving high school students free access to the New York Times, or giving small businesses grants and loans, that's got to be sourced from somewhere, right? And so there's all the things that you can control and how you can try and forecast as best as possible. But it's going to be you're facing a lot of different unknowns, and you need to also look at economic indicators as well, right? When will and how will airlines come back? What does that mean to ad budgets, right? And so you start to look at categories outside of your own and what impacts will be there. And so it's some of that part is doom and gloom, but some of that part it's exciting, right? Because you're making your best educated guesses and forecasts and hope that you're investing your time and you're investing with partners that will scale, as we go forward in the new normal.
Yeah, I think two great points in there. One is for people to realize, because everybody's, of course, in the advertising industry, we're wondering about budgets and size of budgets and shifting into different medium and so forth. The point you just made, which I think is really interesting for people to think about, is like, there is a pie of dollars, right, that are adjusted each year and so forth based on lots of different factors. When revenues come down, that pie does have to shrink. And when you start giving money to different causes, it's interesting, that doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? And so in some companies that might come out of part of the marketing budget, right? Especially if you do tie it to communications and so forth. So people have to understand it's not only just shrinking, it's actually reallocating pieces of the pie. Did I describe that correctly?
No, I think you got to look at a total, like from a CEO and CFO standpoint, you have to look at the total expenditure, right? The total balance sheet and how you can fund the different efforts. That's, I think, too, having more of an enterprise view versus an individual silo view, of investments is one of the things that I've seen accelerate more so as well.
Yeah. Let me try and get a couple of these questions that have been submitted. And I'll try and do it in a way, I won't be able to get it to a yes or no, but we can do it a little bit rapid fire. If you want, or as many as possible. So there's no upfront this year. And I know the digital new fronts have shifted virtual. Will that make a significant impact on how much media buy, the way you buy it, or is it just another one of these things where we have to shift our process?
I think it's just a shift in evolution and process, right? I think that the theater and the presentations and how information is released changed. The conversations you have with those partners, I'm saying I think you're moving to more of individual conversation and sort of more customized approaches to partnerships that are multifaceted regardless, right? And so whether that be Google, Twitter, and Facebook, or whether that be NBCU, Disney, and CBS Viacom, I think they're still all going to be partners, and we're still going to have deeper, meaningful relationships. You're just missing a cocktail party and a big presentation that we're probably shrinking from an attendance standpoint anyway. So I think that it changes and evolves, right? And we've, and they're all great partners to us, and we will continue to have those deeper conversations. So I think the marketplace just moves a little bit differently because of all this.
Maybe shrinking a little from a few less cocktail parties and dinners too, but those were good. Speaking of which, happy Cinco de Mayo. I see.
Yes.
Bar stocked. We
Cheers.
got something. Maybe later.
Well done, Lee. Well done.
Sync back up. In terms of maybe just thinking through different even partners that you might be working with, because some partners, as you mentioned, like the Verizon Media Group, I imagine, you've worked with them differently now to actually put out a lot of the content and so forth. But are there other partners like in different industries that maybe you haven't thought about working before? Maybe you've seen them at meetings because they're also a partner of the NFL or whatever, but maybe there's ways to come together with every partners or
I think, like, again, everybody tends to run to a crisis, right? And when you think about helping people, I think you get a lot of different thinking. And so even just I'll stick with Pay It Forward Live, integrating with PayPal and Venmo and Square to enable payments, right? And then USA Today and Kevin Gensel and his team already had a database that they were doing something with small businesses. And so, just having a shared mission has brought a lot of partners together in different ways, which are non-traditional, but again, all in the enablement and giving back and caring for those local merchants. And so that's been a good byproduct. Yeah,
that seems to be the home base for you and several of other marketers we've been talking to. Like, how is this helping, right? It's not this is a cool buzzworthy partnership kind of thing. Like,
exactly,
this plus this equals something that is really going to help our customers and in some cases joint constituents with another company. But again, I don't know what the right word is the right word opportunity or silver lining, but this is forcing us to think differently and perhaps put new things into place that we haven't done before. Is there one thing that you're most excited about that you've put into place that will continue on?
I think there's a couple of things. I think we've had a strategy with gaming and esports, and seeing the scale of the engagement there, right? And what we've been able to do in a short amount of time, that was always part of our roadmap, and I think that just accelerated. But then also, like I said, these virtual experiences is going to be something that lives on. Both for me, when I talk about virtual experiences, it's for consumers. It's how we enable our business partners, whether it be Madison Square Garden or MetLife Stadium or the Patriots, whoever it may be, how we help them enable their businesses. And then it's also my team, right, and how we work, right, and meetings like this versus jamming everybody into a conference room where people are bringing in chairs, right, and we're forcing people that live in New Jersey to travel into Manhattan or vice versa. Right? There's going to be a change and evolution and a hybrid type of approach that melds sort of how we had done things in the past to how we can do things in the future.
Yeah. And what about new programs? Do you have any room for, I know a lot of people on the call have ideas and all that. That's overwhelming in a regular time, of course. And, I'm sure you have a process for making sure that ideas are looked at through your agency partners and so forth. But, things that are new, do you keep yourself open to that, or is it kind of heads down on shifting what you have? I saw you mentioned the program with the New York Times. There's a question here about that. And are you looking to do things with other kind of news organizations to get information out there? And again, kudos on doing a really helpful program with the New York Times for high school students to get access to information at this time. But how do you look at some of these new things? Maybe that wasn't new, but it certainly popped up as new on my radar.
Yeah, I'd say yes and, right? So I think we both look to how we can partner with our existing partners, and you can use the New York Times as an example to do something that is helpful and an evolution on what we may have been doing before. I think it is also about how we look at new opportunities, right? There's going to be a lot of net new opportunities, and I am blessed enough to have a good team that supports me and agency partners to help weed through a lot of those different opportunities, because there was never a lack of opportunities before, and now, because everything has shifted and changed, there's a lot of new opportunities, and so you have to be open to. You have to always be open to having the conversation and seeing what's possible. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of different ecosystems that come out of this that weren't, the need wasn't as great as it is now, and so therefore new opportunities are born out of those needs.
Yeah, it seems like also another, again, I'll use your silver lining. I think maybe we'll come up with some others as the time. The opportunity, I don't know, it doesn't taste right using it, even though I know people are looking for ways to move forward, but obviously this is such a horrible situation. But at the same time, businesses are going to pivot, and new ways of doing things will be, let's just say, more effective going forward. I know you've been a big supporter of the Ad Club Media Action program over the years. What an amazing opportunity for brands and media properties to do good in the world by media properties simply donating some form of media, whether it's a page for traditional publications or online resources or TV resources or podcasts. And then for brands like yourself, which have been involved and will continue to be involved in the past, to work with a new partner and bring money to the Ad Club Foundation and education efforts, which are helping the entire industry to rise. I know that was not a question, but maybe you can just talk about
it's always important to volunteer and give back, right? I think that's our role, right? And you need to give back to society, you need to give back to the industry. And we also need to have a sense of optimism, right? There is a coming out of this, right? It's all unknown to all of us. I think the only comforting factor is that the unknown is unknown to everybody. There's not one person on this webcast or whatever that knows more than another in one way, shape, or form. And so being optimistic about what can come out of this and how we all come out of this, and then making sure that you do your part to give back. I think Meaty Action, to your point, has supported diversity within industry, many great causes within this industry that we've all grown up within and are a part of, right? And so it's critical that you continue to support those in new ways and shapes and forms. And so my hope is that, to your point, there's new types of partners, new types of inventory that's in there as part of Meaty Action as we go forth, and that the marketers continue to look to Gina and her efforts in driving that across the board. It's another important way to give back and enable and stay connected with people.
Yeah, well, I'm glad, and the industry is appreciative of all the efforts that you and Verizon have put forth for Meaty Action, and I share it in part not just for the plug, but I do think a lot of people in our industry do want to help and do good, and not all of these media properties or brands are in a position to launch huge initiatives or live programs or all kinds of things, but to donate some unused inventory and a new advertiser comes into your fold, to be able to use that as a connection point and then to help the industry seems like a win-win-win that's pretty light in terms of the lifting of putting the programs together. As you mentioned, the Advertising Club of New York, which is putting this together, is definitely open to working with anybody on different programs like that and other ways of getting information out there. And so we're almost out of time. I wanted to see if there was anything that you wanted to share in addition to, at the end of each of these programs, we ask for a quote that is inspiring to you that you'd like to share with others.
No. I just wanted to thank you all for coming out and listening to me ramble for a bit, and thank Lee and the Advertising Club for having me, and again, just for being there and pulling us together as an industry. It's super important that we all participate, and we will, like I said, we will get through this, and so have that sense of optimism. I don't know how inspiring my quote is, but for those that have worked for me or worked with me, knows it's my favorite quote. It's an Albert Einstein quote, and I think it reigns true now, right, with everything that we've spoken about how you need to change and evolve how you do things because of this, right? But the definition of insanity is do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, right? And so whether that means social distancing or whatever you need to do to stay safe, or how you're approaching your marketplace and how you're showing up, I think it all rings true, and something that I always think about when we're innovating, or you're facing immense challenge to drive an evolution, right? Overall, is that if people want to continue to do same thing over and over again, you're not going to get that looking for. So
Yeah, that's great. And just before I wrap up, are there any like personal passion projects you've been able to take on while you're kind of looking at a new reality of at least how you're physically spending your time?
And the only passion project that I had is I've had a home office that was in my basement for a while, but it's been more of a spare closet, and so I was able to get that cleaned off of, and several bags of paper shredded as a necessity to have a space. And I was also fortunate enough to get a Peloton bike in the beginning of this, and so I'm on week 6 of having a Peloton. So that's been how I've been spending my very few free moments when I'm not on a video conferencing call.
Well, that's definitely positive and helpful. I'm actually going on to week 5 of this new series that I started. You can see the flag behind me, which is called the Sherpa Path. It's a blog that I started years ago after going to the Himalayas and learned about this group of people called Sherpas, who are very spiritual and have helped me really think through difficult situations with a unique perspective. And I felt like now more than ever, this is a time where that perspective could be helpful to others. And so I started hosting a webcast basically with a Sherpa that I met years ago. His name is Karma Sherpa. And we have a discussion sharing some of the Sherpa principles that are used at Mount Everest. Talk about a difficult place with unknown challenges and constant change that really helps you to get your mind set into a place where you can move forward. And so I thought I'd share that with people at this time. And it's a personal passion project. We did just put it up into the Advertising Club's virtual clubhouse in the health and wellness section. So if anybody wants to see a quick recap or video, and my email's in there if anybody wants to be added. It's every other Saturday. So I welcome you to join.
I'll have to check it out, Lee. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, please do. So the quote I have is by a guy named Norman Vincent Peale. And it's pretty interesting of a new word to me that just came up. Maybe it's better than opportunistic, but the quote is, become a possibilitarian. No matter how dark things are, raise your sights to see possibilities. Always see them, for they are always there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Ad Club's Conversation With series. If you missed our first conversations with Cheryl Girian from MasterCard or Sophie Kelly with Diageo, go to theadvertisingclub.org, click on the virtual clubhouse, and you'll see that in there. And please fill out the survey at the end. It's an opportunity for you to tell us how this is going, tell us some other ideas and other folks that you want to hear from. Again, we've started with marketers who are also fellow board members on the Ad Club board, which helps to really kind of make this a very special community that we're all part of. The next conversations will be on May 19th. So we're doing these every 2 weeks with Taryn Lance, the VP of Global Media for American Express. Feel free to share this. We'll have the recording posted soon, again, back in the advertisingclub.org virtual clubhouse. And I just want to say one more really sincere thank you, John, for taking your time and sharing your insights and being such a great colleague and industry leader. We really appreciate you.
No, happy to. Thank you all. Have a great day. Stay safe.